This year's free agency class has a ton of potential, and I say potential because obviously it's not free agency yet, and the players that are set to become UFAs could, of course, still re-up with their teams before they hit the open market. There's the big name guys like Malkin, Letang, Johnny Gaudreau, Nazem Kadri, Philip Forsberg. However, in this video, we're not really going to be focusing on the high-profile, unrestricted free agents coming up. We're going to talk about some of the guys that I feel like could wind up being steals for the team that signs them. Now, don't get me wrong, some of the players on this list are still relatively big names. However, they're guys that I feel like could be had for a really good deal in free agency for various different reasons. I've got 7 total players to go over in this video, and of course, if there's anybody that you can think of that you feel like could potentially wind up being a steal in free agency that I don't cover today, be sure to let me know down below in the comments. Let's go ahead and kick things off with the one and only goaltender we're going to talk about in this video, Casey DeSmith of the Pittsburgh Penguins, 30 years old, had a cap of $1.25 million this past season. If I had to make a prediction on what he's going to fetch in free agency, it's definitely going to be more, but probably not by a whole lot. My guess is between $2 and $2.5 million a season. I really believe Casey DeSmith would be a fantastic option for any team looking for a 1B option in net, a team that already has a decent starting goaltender, but not one of the top starting goaltenders in the league, a team that kind of wants to form a tandem. And honestly, a team that comes to mind is the Toronto Maple Leafs. If Jack Campbell has priced his way out of Toronto with the way he's performed over his tenure with the team, then they're obviously going to have to sign a goaltender in the offseason. They already have Peter Mrazek under contract, but I can't imagine they want to roll into next season with Peter Mrazek as their number one guy, because obviously his first year in Toronto was pretty shaky, dealt with a lot of injuries as well. Now, although Casey DeSmith is 30 years old, he's still a relatively unproven player. He only has 97 career games under his belt. However, he's never finished a season with a save percentage below .910, and back in the 2018-19 season, when Casey DeSmith played a career-high 36 games, he put up a .916 save percentage. I'm not saying Casey DeSmith is going to sign with the team and put up Vezina caliber numbers, but what I am saying is if he signs with the team for most likely under $3 million a season or even less than that and provides good results as a 1B option, I would consider that a steal of a signing. The next player we have to talk about is kind of an interesting one. It's Claude Giroux of the Florida Panthers. He's 34 years old, had a cap hit this past season of $8.275 million, and just purely based off of name recognition, Claude Giroux is one of the bigger name guys that is set to become a UFA this offseason, and although Giroux will most likely still get a pretty sizable deal in free agency no matter where he signs, it's not going to be anywhere close to $8.275 million like he was making. My prediction for Giroux is somewhere between $5 and $6 mil in terms of an AAV, and honestly, for the kind of player that he still is, despite being 34 years old, as long as it's just a 1 or 2 or 3 year deal, I think that would be a fantastic get for any team. Claude Giroux is still a legit top line contributor who's capable of driving the play, putting up good results at both ends of the ice. He had 23 points in just 18 games with the Panthers after the trade deadline, and even though the Panthers as a whole, I would say, had a pretty disappointing postseason, I would say Claude Giroux's performance was good. For me, he's definitely going to be one of the more interesting names to watch this offseason. I kind of get the feeling that he's going to re-up with Florida because I think that honestly be a really good decision for him, and who wouldn't want to live in Florida, especially when you're towards the end of your career, but we'll see what happens. Moving along now to the next player, we got Riley Smith of the Vegas Golden Knights. 31-year-old winger had a cap hit of $5 million this past season. My prediction on what his cap hit is going to look like heading into next season, I'm going to say somewhere between $4 and $4.5 million. I feel like Riley Smith is a guy who's kind of been lost in the shuffle over the past couple of seasons in Vegas. Obviously, that is a team with a ton of talent, and they're a team that's also been right up against the cap for the past 2, 3, 4 seasons, and oftentimes they've had to sell off players from their own team just to free up cap space. Examples of that, Marc-Andre Fleury, Nate Schmidt. But Riley Smith's name was always thrown out there in terms of a candidate for a cap dump trade. Obviously, that didn't happen. He's now heading towards the open market, and considering Vegas's cap situation, I can't see them bringing him back. Riley Smith has been a very consistent player throughout his career. He's only had a couple of full seasons in which he's finished under a half point per game. He has 4 20-goal seasons under his belt, would have had 5 if he played in every game this year. I feel like any team looking for help on the wing in the middle 6 will be interested in Riley Smith this offseason. I can't imagine he's going to command too huge of a contract based off of the fact that he did miss a pretty big chunk of time this season, only played 56 games, and Vegas didn't make the playoffs, so there isn't that recency bias there of someone having a big playoff run sometimes and then you see them get paid in free agency. This next one is kind of a tough one for me. I was going back and forth on if I wanted to put him in the video or not. Obviously, now that we're talking about him, I decided to. The player is Valeri Nichushkin of the Colorado Avalanche. 27-year-old winger had a cap hit of just $2.5 million this past season. He's going to get a pretty significant raise, of course, but how significant is it going to be? Is he going to get overpaid? I can't really see that happening. Nichushkin went from being an analytical darling throughout his first couple seasons with the Avalanche and still putting up decent offensive numbers to this season still being a beast analytically and also putting up the counting stats. He broke out for 25 goals, 52 points, all career highs. Those are the kind of numbers that everybody thought Nichushkin would be putting up every single season with Dallas when they took him 10th overall back in 2013. The impact that Nichushkin has on the game for the Avalanche night in and night out at 5-on-5 on the penalty kill, he's an elite penalty killer, it cannot be overstated, and I'm really intrigued to see what kind of deal he gets this offseason. If the AAV is anything around or lower than $5 million a season, I would consider that a steal, but I could definitely see a scenario where he gets in between $6 and $7 million a season, and I'm not saying he wouldn't be worth that, but I don't think that would really qualify as being a steal, so that's kind of why I went back and forth on having him in this video or not. The next guy we have to talk about is Vincent Trocheck, centerman for the Carolina Hurricanes, had a cap hit of $4.75 million this past season, and for a long time I feel like Vincent Trocheck had one of the better value contracts in the league, especially back, around 2017 when he had a 75-point season for Florida. I definitely feel like he'll get a raise this offseason, but I'm not sure by how much. I feel like maybe he'll be in between $5 and $5.5 million, somewhere around there, and I still think that's great value for Trocheck. I've always been a pretty big fan of his. I love the way he plays. He's a guy you can use in almost every situation, both special teams. He's great in the face-off circle. He's a good forechecker. Just does a little bit of everything while still putting up really solid offensive numbers as well. He had 51 points this season for the Canes. Like I said, once upon a time had a 75-point season for the Panthers. I feel like any team that's looking for some help down the middle, specifically a number 2 center, should be pretty interested in Trocheck this offseason, and as a Red Wings fan, if the price is right and he doesn't want like 8 years on a contract, I'd be pretty happy if the Wings went out and got him. Next up on the list, we have Rickard Rakell of the Pittsburgh Penguins. 29-year-old winger had a cap hit of about $3.789 million this past season, and like I said about Trocheck, for a while, this contract that Rakell was on was one of the better value deals in the league. I'm pretty interested to see what type of money he gets as a free agent, because I feel like likely he'll get a raise, but I'm not sure by how much. I feel like maybe he'll get around $4.5 million because he didn't light the world on fire after going from Anaheim to Pittsburgh at the deadline, was injured in the postseason, so only appeared in 2 games in that Rangers series, didn't have any points. Rakell is definitely a player that I still believe in. I think he can get back to that level he was at from 2016 to 2018 when he had back-to-back 33-plus goal seasons. I think a big reason why he hasn't been at that level since then is because he has missed a decent amount of time pretty much every single season. He hasn't played 70 or more games in a season since those 30-goal seasons. If a team can sign Rakell for around what I predicted, around $4.5 million a season, and he can get healthy, I feel like more likely than not that deal will wind up being a steal. And now for the final player we're going to talk about in today's video, the second Colorado Avalanche player on the list, Andre Burakovsky, 27-year-old winger, had a cap hit of $4.9 million this past season. A guy that will probably be expecting a little bit of a raise considering he put up career highs across the board this year with 22 goals, 39 assists, 61 points in 80 games for the Avs. Burakovsky is really a sneaky good goal scorer, and one of the things that intrigues me about him is the fact that he's never really got significant ice time in a single season. This year was his career high in terms of ice time per game, and it was just a little over 16 minutes a night. I really feel like there's a chance that if given a bigger role, first line minutes, first line power play minutes, maybe play 18 or so minutes a night, this is a guy that could pop off and go for like 35 goals and 75 plus points in a season. I'll say a similar thing to what I said about Riley Smith in Vegas. I feel like Burakovsky has kind of gotten lost in the shuffle a little bit, especially in the postseason so far as a member of the Colorado Avalanche. With how well Valeri Nichushkin is playing, that has kind of stapled Burakovsky to the bottom 6, the third line when he's in the lineup. Burakovsky's definitely going to be a really interesting name to follow this offseason, and another intriguing thing about him is he's probably going to be one of the younger UFAs on the market. He's only 27 still. This is a guy that realistically you could sign to like a 6-year deal and get the majority of his prime years out of that deal, and when it's up, he's still only going to be like 33 years old, as opposed to when, some UFAs sign longer term deals, by the time the deal is over, they're like 36, sometimes 37, 38 years old, right? So that is going to do it for this video. Those were 7 upcoming UFAs that I feel like could potentially wind up being steals wherever they may sign. Again, like I said at the start of the video, if there's anyone that you can think of that I didn't mention today, be sure to let me know down below in the comment section. While you're down there, if you enjoyed today's video, please be sure to leave it a like. That is the best way to show your support. And if this was your first time checking out the channel and you want more NHL content just like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll talk to you all soon.